Hello, everyone, and welcome to our STAMH education series. Our first webinar this year, Better Email Marketing, How to Stand Out in Cluttered Inboxes. I'm Tyler Davidson, Vice President and a Chief Content Director at STAMH, and joining me today is my colleague, Corey Kozad. Before we get started, though, we have a few housekeeping items to review. Today's presentation will last 60 minutes, so please feel free to submit a question at any time by typing a message in the Q&A box. And if we're unable to address all of the questions during the presentation, one of us will follow up with you via email within the next few days. And should you experience any technical difficulties, please send a message in the Q&A box or call us at 800-553-8878. A copy of the presentation slides and the on-demand recording will be available after the webinar. STAMH is a comprehensive digital marketing, brand development, market research, and creative company. STAMH serves multiple industries, including higher education, and has 3 media brands: Buildings, which serves the commercial property and facility management market; Interiors and Sources, which serves commercial buildings, designers, and architects; and Meetings Today, which serves the meetings and conventions industry. In addition, we have an audience management group named Auditive, and Thorburn, which is a full-service branding agency located in Minneapolis that serves consumer and B2B brands. I also want to bring to your attention our next webinar in the series. On February 18th at 12:30 Central, Adam Natz will present Get Your Data in Shape, one New Year's resolution you can keep. And you can find more information and register for this webinar on our website at www.stamh.com/webinars. And we hope you can join us. Now, I would like to introduce our speaker, Corey Kozad. Corey joined STAMH's team in 2020 as an account executive. He brings over a decade of digital marketing experience, excuse me, having led enterprise initiatives in industries such as e-commerce, manufacturing, higher ed, and healthcare. He is certified in Marketo and IBM email platforms, as well as holds certifications in Google AdWords and Bing advertising. He achieved a BA in communications with a theater minor from the University of Iowa, and he earned his MBA from St. Ambrose University. Corey is passionate about helping clients set goals, measure KPIs, and connect with their audiences through their conversion experiences. A sports fanatic, he also enjoys fantasy baseball in his free time. And with that, I would like to now hand it over to Corey. Welcome, Corey.
Thanks, Tyler. Okay, so I'm excited to be able to share some insights today about email marketing. It's something I've done kind of throughout my career, and I love to see how it continues to evolve and grow and to change, but also become a really big part of different organizations' marketing mix. So it's interesting that we live in this world where we're exposed to such a staggering number of ads every day. So 4,000 to 10,000 ads daily. And that is on top of the nearly 60 billion junk emails that are sent out each day. So all of our inboxes are full right now with a bunch of junk email. And it's just going to happen again tomorrow, and again the next day, and again the next day. Junk email is just a very relentless part of email marketing. So we need to stand out. We got to make sure that we can cut through all of that noise, all of those ads that we see. We want our messages, our brand, to be what people remember. So in this webinar, we're going to cover a number of different topics. There's actually quite a bit that we're going to cover that's not listed here. But we'll cover a little bit about email design and then the content that goes into it, relevancy and frequency, analytics and ongoing optimizations, integrating with digital marketing. So email isn't a standalone tool for folks to use. It should be integrated in the complete marketing strategy mix. And there's a good reason for that. It's because it's very effective. And then we'll also kind of throughout the slides today, I have included a number of different things that kind of seem to be coming to the top of the list as far as like what's trending in 21 for email. So we'll go ahead and get things going here. Email marketing is over. No, it's not over. It's far from over. Throughout my career, there have been a number of different leaders that I've reported to, people that I've worked with, clients, all fearing that email had come to an end. But it's actually back. It's bigger than ever before, and it's continuing to grow. The number of adult users utilizing email is not, it's 92%. It's not surprising why. We need it in our work lives. We need it in our private lives. And most of us use email daily. It's really hard to imagine not utilizing this platform for our news, for our communications, for our work happenings. It's so vital and intertwined in like what we do. And there's a lot of data that's available out there that kind of speaks to this a little bit. 2019, worldwide email users was just under 4 billion. And now in 2021, we're supposed to be over 4 billion worldwide users for email marketing. So it's continual growth. Now knowing that there's all this email usage, how are we going to get our emails into our prospective students, customers, whomever it should be? How do we get our messages in their inboxes and get them to open it up, engage with that content, and take the action that we want them to take? So we'll be covering that. Just to kind of reinforce the point, as the world has changed, when I first started email marketing, desktop was still, at least for the organizations that I was working at, desktop was number one. And then we knew that at some point, mobile devices were going to overtake this behemoth of desktop. And it certainly did. And it's not surprising since we all carry these little devices on us all the time, our emails readily accessible. So there's good reason for that. However, like we were in a year last year in 2020 in which things kind of seemed like they were maybe changing just out of the circumstances we were all under. Laptop stand in Google Trends really started to climb pretty considerably in 2020. In fact, I was trying to find one for myself, and they're really hard to find if you just go into a general store trying to find one of those. So there's definitely a demand for laptop, desktop type products. And I don't know necessarily what it means right now. I think as we get into 2021, we'll learn more. But it's kind of an interesting trend that came out of 2020. In addition, I was kind of just searching through, trying to figure out, if I were a commerce individual and I had a website and I want to advertise certain products, what would I need to sell in 2020? What would be popular? And number 12 on the list were laptop skins. And so I haven't even heard those keywords combined in a sentence like that in a very long time. I didn't know they even made them anymore, to be honest. But it's just very interesting. So 2020 was kind of a game changer. And I think as we get into 2021, we look back on all of our metrics and stats that we have on our websites and so forth. We can maybe see, did our intended audience, did their habits change at all? And if so, then maybe it makes sense to make a tweak, but would those changes be long-standing? Probably not. As far as the top ESP, so I get a lot of questions from folks. Sometimes they're wanting to switch up their email platform. They're out there shopping around. Maybe the one that they're currently on doesn't have all the bells and whistles, or maybe integrations that they need. And so I often refer back to Litmus. They have a number of reports they release every year, and they tend to be very, very accurate, but also just insightful and forward-thinking. As far as the number one user, MailChimp certainly at the top. You don't have to overpay for it. It can do plenty with automation. And it's just kind of interesting to see how these brands do change quite a bit from year to year, just because of all the consolidations and buyouts and things that take place in the industry. So I imagine when I get the latest report and provide that to you guys down the road here, that we'll probably be looking at something different as far as the lineup goes. I did also want to look into, what was happening in 2020 as far as maybe usage then versus usage prior to 2020 with the pandemic. And there were a number of good reports that came out, which would be probably, similar to like more of a standard year for us. And on average, people are spending 3 hours plus a day on work emails. They're spending a couple hours just going through their personal email. So if you think about it, that's a lot of time every day that we're consuming content in email. So it's just another reason why I don't think I have to sell you guys on the importance of email. You wouldn't be here, but it is extraordinary just the impact it has on our daily lives. And there are a number of interesting stats that also came out of that. The one that really stood out to me, and that's bolded here in this list, is the frequency of email communications is the leading annoyance of users. So the frequency, getting too many emails in a row, or too many in the same day, too many in the same week. The interesting thing that I've learned over the years is that frequency really depends on how relevant the email tends to be. If I'm getting a message from Amazon and they know exactly what I want to purchase before I do, then I actually value their emails. But if it's something that's really unrelated to my life or my interests or what I need at the time, I skim right over it, as I'm sure many of you guys do as well. Just another quick point here. So, I love the idea of out-of-home advertising. Some of them are really neat and interesting, and they do catch your eye. But you really only have 5 to 10 seconds. If you're driving down the road here and you see this building, you have 5 to 10 seconds to actually absorb that information and then try to remember it while also not trying to swerve into any cars or whatnot. So, what's interesting about it is our inboxes are so full that I think a lot of us actually just scroll down through our like Gmail accounts, our personal emails, maybe not the work emails. You probably actually want to read those. But the personal ones, you just skim down through there. Nothing catches your eye. You just keep going. And that doesn't take 5 to 10 seconds. That could take a couple seconds. So that's all the more reason why some of the things that we'll be talking about today are really vital, so that help you actually stand out so that you don't get overlooked. Someday in digital technology, when all the different platforms and data sources and databases are all connected, and advertisers know exactly where we are, who we are, what we want, exactly when we need it, then we'll be at this Minority Report type scenario in the distant future. And it's interesting because, there have been a lot of technological advances in advertising that things are getting closer and more real time and more personalized. And those are really great elements. And something like this is obviously extremely intrusive and so forth. And we want to probably stay away from it. But it's just kind of interesting, the thought process, like how can you be in front of the right person at the right time? So that kind of takes me to my points. Really the point of email is you want to be seen and heard. So you want them to actually open your email, to read it. You want to be heard, and you want it to be in front of the right person with the right content at the right time. And if you're not doing that, and if you're giving the wrong message to the wrong person at the wrong time, then that email is probably going to go to a spam folder and they don't want to talk to you anymore. But in any case, you can avoid that. It doesn't have to be an issue. There's certainly things that we can talk about that'll help you get there. And some of it is just coming up with different checklists, trying to keep things organized and planning and staying focused. So I break this up into really 3 different chunks. There's a kind of the pre-send phase. There's the post-send after the email goes out, and then you're kind of waiting around for your metrics to come back in. And then there's these ongoing things that you continually have to do, whether it's during the send phase or post-send, but they're kind of ongoing throughout the course of the year. Really, I spend a lot of time just trying to understand, like, just before an email is sent out, like, why is it going to be sent out? And who's it supposed to go to? So the pre-send phase is really that phase in which you're trying to build out your little like miniature marketing plan. You're thinking about the user journey. So oftentimes it's easy to overlook maybe what are the next steps after somebody clicks through your email, the little link in the email, maybe the CTA button. Are they going to have a good experience on the website once they get there? And so it's really trying to think through that entire approach, making sure that you're connecting all the dots so that that person, next time they receive an email, they open it up again so they can take the next journey. But there's just kind of the general next steps here. Obviously, you create your content, you create your goals and KPIs, and these are in no like particular order, but I try to get them somewhat like realistic here. Obviously, you develop your email and you test it, and you'd probably test it one more time, just making sure you don't have any spelling errors, broken links, bad images, things like that. But it's not to forget that, if you do have these mechanisms in your email like links, you got to make sure that you're going to be able to track those and actually get some of that data so you can make decisions next time. And that takes us into the post-send phase. I listed digital dashboard at the top, knowing that not everyone probably on today's call can even have a digital dashboard, that maybe don't have the tools in house or like the access to it or ability to do it. But it is something that's extremely helpful. Being able to look at your email stats, your performance, break it down by type and audience and so forth, to really try to understand, are we doing the right things to make an actual impact on the organization? And dashboards certainly do help with that. But really, it's all about like kind of the ongoing optimizations that you continue to make. Maybe you learned that a certain block of copy didn't really work out, or maybe you find out that the subject line was off. And you know that it's off because nobody really opened up the email to begin with. So there's a lot of things that kind of go into what happens after you send the email. And I do tend to wait maybe a week or two, probably 2 weeks after the email is sent, before I try to report back real metrics on that email. You usually get some initial stats, right? All the folks who see it immediately will open it up. But there's like kind of like this like group of folks who throughout the span of 5 to 10 days, they may go back and open up their email just because they're busy and they have so many other ones, and then interact at that point. So it's a little premature to, after you send out the email, the next day come in and say, well, that was a success or that was a failure. And then as far as ongoing, I mean, there's a lot of things that kind of go into the overall health of email marketing. Just making sure that you have a good marketing calendar, that you stay away from scheduling 5 emails on the same day, unless it makes sense for your organization. In some organizations, that does make sense. Your sender score. So are you being reported as a spammer, as a trustworthy sender? There's some different tools that can kind of help you determine that. And also the landing pages, again, making sure that your forms, maybe you have too many fields in the form, and that people get to the last field, they just don't want to fill it out and they leave. So those are optimizations that you kind of have to go back and analyze and just get together as a team and make some decisions on, so that you're continually moving forward. The top reasons emails don't get clicked, and there's 3 from my perspective. Like this is what I kind of chalk up as to like the main reasons here. And there's other ones, right? There's other variables, but to me these are the 3 biggest. One's volume. Again, too many. How relevant is an email? And then the design. Like you wouldn't believe how many people will just completely delete the email just because they don't like the design of it. It just doesn't look right. It doesn't seem like it's up to date, or like it matches their interest in some way. They actually have a really big impact. But as far as design goes, it also comes back to being a responsive email, that it works well across browsers and across platforms and so forth. So there is a lot that goes into that. So that takes us into email templates. And again, everyone knows that emails, they're going to have to be responsive today. 10 years ago, if your emails weren't responsive, it probably wasn't the end of the world. People would still get on their desktop or laptop and engage with the email. But just knowing what we know, looking at the stats from earlier about the number of users utilizing smartphones, it's extremely vital now. And just showing the images on the right here, some office furniture, you can see it kind of how nicely they break up their desktop views here. And then when it scrolls into or goes into the responsive mode for a mobile device, it really does stack up nicely. It's clean, it's kind of organized just as they want it to be. So they want to provide a good experience there. The one stat that kind of stood out to me as well is that if an email displays poorly, no matter how good the content is, if it resonates with them, some people are just going to delete it. And it's just an interesting behavior that we have as humans, I think. I don't know if it's just like the aesthetics means so much to us that we just delete it, but it does happen. And then some people will not only delete the email, but they'll also just unsubscribe. Like, I guess it's just, maybe the designs of it really don't match their interest, and it doesn't seem worthwhile to receive emails in the future either. But there are tools that can help, and especially like Litmus I've used in the past. It's a great one where it allows you to easily kind of render out your emails and look at them in different platforms and devices and things like that. But also a lot of different ESPs have features like that. So whether they're an add-on or they're this part of the system, just take advantage of those. They're there to help you without having to send out a bunch of test emails to yourself on all your different devices and all your different email accounts you've set up so you can review them. I used to do that when in the days of desktop, and it took a lot of time, but there's a lot of efficiencies that have been built into ESPs over the years. So Thinking about email templates. So you really can't just have one email template. Like a one size doesn't fit all. Like you're going to have different kind of designs and needs throughout the year that it may make sense to deliver your content in different ways. And here's just a couple of different ones I was looking at, throughout the last year. Thank you emails, a good thank you email. If somebody signs up to receive your future newsletters, or maybe for more information about a program or a product. Year-end review, and it's always fun. You know what? And I got to be honest, I didn't see many year-end review emails for 2020, but for 2019, I saw a ton. So I didn't have an opportunity to replace this one for you. But they're actually really fun emails. There's the chance to kind of review like where you went with your customers, your partners throughout the span of a year, and celebrate those things. Event checklists. So if you're putting on a big show somewhere and you want to make sure that people know exactly what to bring, the temperature that's going to be there, all the different nuggets that go into that. And there's a lot. Checklists can be helpful, and they're also helpful for a lot of other things as well. And then celebration ones. So if you have a big milestone, things we're celebrating, if people truly care about your brand, they'll want to celebrate with you. And so it's a good opportunity just to remind them, like, look how great you made us. Look how we did this together. So just a couple of different designs there for you to consider. Another, I guess maybe it's more of a change in how email platforms are going to perform, right? Like they're very much focused on accessibility, usability, and so dark mode. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with dark mode now, especially on iPhones. It's the ability to change out and to flip-flop the text background colors and such, so that it's easier on your eyes when you're sitting in bed at night and you have your phone out or your laptop and you're trying to get through your email. And it's becoming like a lot wider acceptance in the industry, just as far as people jumping on board. And it was exciting to see Outlook, their web platform, also jumping on with that. And I think that'll continue to evolve. I know there's many different email service platforms out there, and hopefully that they'll jump on board with some of these dark modes and some of these features. But we also have other features that we can talk about today as well. And one other thing, just to back up quickly, regarding dark mode, I did get asked recently, I presented on dark mode, and you actually have more control over like what is presented than what is seen here on the right. So they can change out via some media queries and things. Like they can swap out like so that their email logo isn't white over the top of the dark, and vice versa. So you can go into the CSS and you can make some updates there and have more control over the dark mode presentation. Email design and content. So now we have a cool design in mind. We spent the time to make sure it was responsive, that was going to look great, and all the different email providers. And then it's time to start dropping in that content. And really some of the things to be mindful of as you do that is that as you send out emails, and maybe you send out a bunch of emails, are you keeping your voice and style consistent? And if they're not being consistent, are there reasons for that? Are you trying to share a different type of message? And sometimes there can be some good use cases for that. But in general, if you're going to send out the same type of email, it's best to have the same type of language and style going into it. Use definitely the headings and subheadings to make sure that things are going to stand out and pop and be easily read, especially in the short period of time that people spend consuming the emails, right? They really want to get through them and engage with them on a pretty quick level. And definitely balance text to content, text to images. So in the past, I at least myself, and I know it used to be like widely accepted across like the industry as well. But if you sent out an email that was just one gigantic image, oftentimes you'd get flagged as a spammer, right? There's nothing really in there that is worthwhile. Maybe the image doesn't even load because it's too big to begin with. But oftentimes it was flagged as a spammer because people who were willing to spam, they weren't really interested in writing great content for that person anyways. And so whatever the easiest route to get a click is what they went with. The other reason, kind of that to control like what you're doing from a content perspective, is that you don't want to make the emails too long. If they do get too long, some email service providers, like they'll actually trim off the bottom, like Google or Gmail, I'm sorry, and then you'll get that little thing at the top saying view the entire email. So just be mindful that if you have an email that takes a lot of scrolls to get down to the bottom of it, you're probably going to have to do some extra work to get that person to click on the view entire message to see that. Try to limit the number of different fonts that you're going to use. You definitely don't want to overwhelm people with a variety of different styles. It just doesn't read well, but also, again, from the aesthetics perspective, it may not be the look you're going for. And certainly, and I think, really importantly, spend a lot of time making sure that you're personalizing the email content that's going into the email. So not every person probably needs to have the exact same content, whether that's the same wording or the same images or the same offers and so forth. So utilize the data that you have in your databases and making sure that you're using that to actually speak to a person in a way that they want to be spoken to. So create relevant content for your audiences. And so one of the things that in the past that was extremely helpful was definitely utilizing, different tools and resources. Working with an e-commerce company, they had a lot of data that they could share, not only about like previous purchasing decisions, but also ones that were trying to predict future purchasing decisions. So all that information would allow for a lot of great ways to segment email lists. And that again goes back to being able to tell share the right message with the right person. So the more that you can slice and dice your audiences to understand like what they truly want from you, what they want to see, the more successful that your campaigns will be. As the content is more relevant, you'll get more clicks, you'll get more action on your website, and hopefully get the end result that you're looking for. So another one is about making sure that you can send the right email to the right person based on like their preference. And there's a number of different kind of email preference centers that I've seen over the years that are really wonderful. It allows people to easily select which email they want to receive. This is a really unique one that I've seen from National Geographic, where they know that you're new, you just signed up for their e-newsletters, and they want to help you get the right content. So they're asking you to basically select the image that you're interested in, and that'll take you to the web page where you can learn more about animals in this case. But it also helps dictate future emails. So not only does the web behavior help kind of give an email marketer knowledge as to like what you want, but also your actions in that email. So this is just kind of a more unique way that I've seen outside of that email preference center to be able to help get that content to the right person. Images and alt text. So one of the things that I found out painfully years ago was that not every image is going to load as it should in the inbox, and there's a number of things that you can do. So as far as just providing good alt text, make sure that you're adding alt text to all your images. You can also control some of the background styling for that. So when it does show up without the image loading, that you can maybe show it in a more visual way. It's just an important thing to do from accessibility as well. But also optimize the images. Ensure the images aren't, vastly bigger than the 72 DPI. You don't want to take an image that you just took with your camera that may be like 300 pixels, and then you try to put that into your email and it just doesn't really work properly. You definitely have to size those down. But it also helps with just loading the email more quickly as well. Insert video stills and link to the video on your website. So there's not many different email providers that actually allow you to play videos in the email. There are a handful like third-party tools that can help facilitate some of that. But it's not really at the point where Gmail and Yahoo and Outlook and all these other folks that they're really accepting image type files inside of that email. But there are ways around it. Just doing, again, that video still, maybe have the play button over the top of it and getting those people to click back through to actually view the video on your website, which is a great place to view it because after that, they can then take the next step that you'd like them to as well. In the example down below here, this is really fascinating. Like, so I've seen some companies be able to actually put like little carousels inside their emails. So in this case, this company was selling, t-shirts and sunglasses and stuff. You can actually, inside of the email itself, you can kind of scroll through there on the mobile device, look at the different options. It's brilliant because you don't have to stack up so many images on top of each other, which just makes your email even longer. And people certainly like to see multiple options when making some sort of decision. So, and then outside of that, animated GIFs. So I love them. I think that they oftentimes do play pretty well in most email providers, but you have to be careful about how big that file is. You got to make sure that you've optimized it correctly, that the overall file size isn't gigantic. And then again, you're going to run into load times and if it even plays at all, but they do work really well. And so I hope to see a lot more of these kind of little animated GIFs inside of the emails moving forward. As far as kind of like where I get some of my information at or some helpful tools, because I shared the carousel menu option here, I had some people ask me last time, how do we do that? Like, where do you get the code for that at? How do you know how to do that? And so this one site, I just wanted to share it with you, reallygoodemails.com. They have a lot of really good examples. So if you're kind of running short on ideas about, maybe new designs, maybe what some competitors are also doing for their email designs, you can get that there, but you can also look further into it by diving into the code in the background as well, because it is also shared on the site. And that's really helpful as you go into creating some of these features in your own email templates. And then I did want to share some of the GIFs with you. These are just really cool ones. So Freshly, they send out a number of emails and they're really visual. It does make me want to order food, which isn't surprising, but just like the animation itself is just so much more engaging than a static image would ever be. And then for them to be able to kind of share the steps with me in an animated way, just very, very cool usage of the platform. And again here, just a few other ones. The one in the upper right is kind of one of those examples. If you're trying to get people to watch your video and click through, making a little animated banner there is actually pretty helpful. So then we get to the ongoing testing and optimization. And really this is it's such a critical piece. So even before you send out the email, to make sure that you're testing out your subject lines, right? So if you've thought through one subject line, can you come up with another one? And just test them out and just do it randomly, do it occasionally. You don't have to do it like for every email. But it is interesting to see like what your results are. And sometimes it's fascinating that maybe even like one word here, one word there makes such an impactful difference. Keeping the subject lines around like 41 characters or 7 words. It's interesting, but people have actually done studies on this. And it does tend to be the sweet spot around conversion. But if it's 65 characters, it's not the end of the world either. But that's just what's been kind of shown to be maybe the most effective. Pre-header text. For the longest time, if you guys remember looking in your inboxes and you would see, click here to view the email in a web browser or whatever. Largely that's gone away and it's been replaced by actual useful pre-header copy. So actually trying to tell more of a story. So you're trying to take what you had for your subject line and then take it even farther, tell people even more about what they can expect when they do open up your email. Segmenting email lists by audience. I think that's like one of the most important. If you find that there's characteristics or interests or and similarities between those things, and you have the opportunity to segment your lists and your different ESPs, like it's so worthwhile. You just tell a better story. And again, it's getting the right message to the right person. So like, maybe a guy that's in Texas, his opinions and what he needs is going to be different than maybe another guy that's out on the East Coast. It's just kind of how it is. But speaking to those guys differently will definitely pay off. Dynamic content. So if you have the opportunity, kind of going back to kind of the personalization, bring in some dynamic content here or there. So maybe if you're trying to speak to like a lot of people, I guess is the easiest one. So like when you say, dear so-and-so, right, it'll automatically pull in that person's first name. Those are great touches, not something that you probably always have to do, but trying to find ways throughout the email where it makes sense to bring in more of that dynamic content. And trying out different things with your CTAs. So inline links are great. Buttons, the CTA buttons are fantastic. But try to mix and match, maybe different colors, different things like that, just different wording and so forth. There's so much you can do with it, but definitely don't try to use an actual image file as your CTA button. Again, it kind of goes back to if that image doesn't load properly and then somebody just sees like a little gray box that says click here, and it's probably not going to get them to click on it. Also the days of the week in different times. Oftentimes people would say, Sundays really aren't a great day. And after a few tests, they find out that maybe Sunday's not a bad day, or maybe it's not a bad day for their entire list, but a portion of their list, they love getting emails on Sunday. So it really is just trying to find what are the optimal send times and days for your customers, for your clients, for your prospects, and so forth, because it's probably going to vary. And so it's definitely worth testing. And then the last one, it's really don't forget to revisit, nurture, and automated campaigns. So don't set it and forget it. You actually do have to go back after you set those up and just make sure that they're running the way that you think that they would run. Are they sending out on the right days as you've dictated in the back end of the ESP? And sometimes you'll find just by going into your email metrics and stats and so forth that you find reasons to make adjustments to those automated campaigns. And so really, I probably about at least once a week, just going in, checking them, checking the health of them, any insights that you can gather, and maybe make tweaks if you need to make tweaks. So a closer look at the subject line, I just want to provide you kind of what it looks like if you use more than 7 words. So if you got up close to like the 10 words, you can see your number of clicks kind of varies from one direction to the other. So this is where we kind of get some of that data that says about 7 words is probably about optimal for a subject line. The other thing is because you only really get one chance, if somebody's scrolling through the email and they're looking at the subject line and there's a spelling error in it, that's like the biggest no-no. I mean, they're gonna look at it and they may have empathy, but they may also just delete it and maybe not be interested in open up future ones. The expectation that the quality isn't there. So it's really just double checking like what you're sending out before you send it. And this year, I've been collecting just a number of different emails, and a lot of these are from like the summer time frame. But what I thought was interesting is some of the ones that really stood out to me are the ones that included little emojis. And so every year there is there's actually a World Emoji Day on July 17th. So if you haven't used emojis in your emails and your subject lines and so forth, and you think that you might want to give it a shot, that could be a good day. It may not be as surprising to somebody when they know that you're doing it on like a world day, like World Emoji Day. But I think they're kind of interesting, and maybe it doesn't work for every industry or every customer base and so forth. But sometimes there probably are instances in which it makes sense to try to stand out by using those. In fact, like only 2% of senders are utilizing emojis in these subject lines. And so if you want to stand out from the other 98% of people who don't use them, it's a good opportunity. Conversion performance. So being able to actually get the data that you want. So obviously in your ESP, you're going to get the most common email performance metrics, things like bounces and opens and clicks and so forth. But if you're trying to actually drive some sort of user action on a website, making sure that you have your Google Analytics in place on the site and that you're using UTM parameters in your links so that you're able to kind of go back into Google Analytics afterwards and really see what's going on. But in addition to that, this is another great way to pull email metrics into a digital dashboard. Google Data Studio connects very well with analytics, and it gives you some of the insights directly within an easy to read dashboard. Lastly, so create meaningful goals, KPIs, things like that. So, if you're trying to increase your performance every year or even like every send, you got to have some sort of baseline in mind, whether it's in some of these cases that I've shared, leads per 1,000 emails sent or revenue per email. Some of those advanced metrics, maybe you have to do a little bit of extra work with to get the values that you're looking for. But those are really actionable insights. And it kind of shares that, does it make sense to keep doing things that way that we are doing them? We need to mix them up and have different messages and so forth. So meaningful goals are just vital. And again, just another plug for dashboards. I know that for like somebody on the executive team, they may not have access to your ESP to go in and actually kind of filter through all the email metrics and stuff. Just finding ways, even if it isn't a dashboard, but ways that you can provide that information to people that need to make decisions. It'll just make their life easier, and they'll certainly appreciate it. But also as a team, I think you'll take steps forward because you'll be getting some really good insights as well. Automated email programs. And so automated email programs are actually like one of my favorite things in email marketing. It's not because it's a lazy thing to do. Like I was saying before, you set it and forget it. You certainly can't. There's actually a lot of work that goes into building them and setting them up and tracking them and reporting on them. But there's a ton of uses. And so these campaigns are versions in which you kind of build out this like little nurturing environment, this order of emails that somebody would get based on their actions, based on who they are in your database. And you kind of then move them along a little journey until they get to the end point where maybe they're now your customer or they're now your partner in some way. And so they're excellent for that. And they usually require multiple steps. Somebody will get one email today, maybe not the other one until next month, but it was based on that user's action that dictated that. So they're kind of moving at their own pace if need be. And you certainly have leverages or levers that you can pull to kind of speed things up if you need to. Some of my favorite programs over the years, so welcome and onboarding emails. Again, you can have like a robust series to really introduce people to your brand, who you are, and really get them comfortable. Cart remarketing for more of the commerce type world. But another one kind of similar to cart remarketing is at the bottom, the form abandonment. So maybe they started filling out a form where they're going to request more information. You have a customer data tool that's capturing information on the back end. You kind of piece those data points together, and you now know that you need to send that person an email and asking them, did they have trouble submitting the information, or would they like help, or do they need more information, and so forth. But there's a bunch of them here that are probably worthwhile. And I know that there's a ton more that we could probably think through together that would be even better or maybe more worthwhile for your organization as well. So why use automation? Automation is because it's going to be timely, and then based on the content that you're using and the different segments that you've built, it's going to be relevant. It's going to be personalized, and it's going to make that person feel as if like you know what they need, like you're providing them the information that they want to help make a decision. And the thing is, like, automated campaigns don't have to run from 8 o'clock in the morning to 5 p.m. at night. They can run it multiple times of the day. Off hours as well. So it's just trying to find like the right sequence for you. But they really do guide journeys. And there's a lot of information that can be like gained, I think, from like a successful nurture campaign. Things that you can take back and take to your content marketing team or your folks that are in search engine marketing. Maybe there's some additional keywords that you found that are really resonating. So there's some really good reasons why to use automation. And then some of the stats that I wanted to share, like, so, how do I know that these things work? Initially I was sending out, thousands and thousands. Usually like each send was about 5 or 1 million contacts per send. And then we started getting into more automation and trying out some different things. Our unique open rate skyrocketed. Our unique click rate skyrocketed. And the orders per 1,000 emails sent went up considerably. And so it was just really wonderful to see that all the work that goes into actually building out automation and trying to nurture people along, that it certainly does pay off. Multi-part emails. So these are the ones that, your ESP likely sends out both. So like your HTML nice email version, as well as like just the standard black and white text version with some links in it, as is shown on the right here. It is important that the ESPs send those out, that you don't opt out of sending both, because really what it does is it kind of also shows email providers like Gmail and others that you're a reputable sender, you can be trusted, you're willing to put in the time to send both. And also for accessibility purposes, not all people do prefer to look at the HTML version. There's a slim portion of individuals out there that do this like the plain text version for whatever reason. Let's see here. Another really cool tool, and I think everybody will probably start seeing this more in 2021 now, accelerated mobile pages. So these are some really cool functionality that can be built into emails. And the interesting thing is that it does require an extra MIME to be sent out with the other two. So it's another MIME type. But they can do things like the image shown on the right. If you send out an email and it contains a Google Doc file, somebody maybe comments in it, you get that file you get that comment in your inbox, and you can just respond back right there in your inbox. You don't have to go back into the file, jump out, and kind of like ruin that sort of workflow that you built. It also allows, or is supposed to allow, for image carousels. I haven't seen many examples of that yet, but I think in 2021, we'll probably see more companies out there taking advantage of this sort of technology, and maybe start running with it and really do some really advanced creative things with email marketing. And again, if you want to learn more information there, if your team is really gung-ho about trying out some coding, building out some new templates, I did provide a link to a tool there that kind of helps you work through some of that process. Email volume and fatigue. So again, the relevance is so important, and the frequency is vital as well, as we talked about. But in my opinion, relevancy definitely it trumps frequency. So if you're always relevant, then the frequency, like maybe the 3 times in a day I got an email from somebody, it's okay because it was meaningful and it was the content that I really needed. So for me, I had Amazon. I probably was a bad example because I really don't need all that. But again, relevancy is king. Like it's important. Avoid blasting the entire contact list if you don't have to. Sometimes there are cases in which you do have to send out just a mass email to everybody, and that's understandable, but it's not really a practice that you probably want to do all the time. You'll want to control how often you're probably doing that. And then again, it's kind of refocusing back on the individual smaller segmented lists that you put together. But I'm definitely not saying that there aren't instances where sending out emails to the entire list makes sense. So. Email fatigue. So one of the ways, if you're trying to get some sort of measure of this, some sort of score, I used to use disaffection index. It's just a way for you to actually get more of a true sense of like who's unsubscribing from your emails. And it does this by looking at like the people who open up your email and click for the sole purpose of clicking to unsubscribe. So this is a little stat here that'll help you kind of get to that. It's really interesting if you look at it. You certainly want that number to be as low as you can. I would say like 1 or 2% is probably like a good spot to be. But if it's lower than that, and you have you have a really good thing going with your email marketing program and it's resonating, then you probably wouldn't have to worry about it. But again, I think this is one of those metrics that we could all benefit from. Email compliance. The world of email compliance is continually changing, right? I think everyone on the call is probably familiar with CAN-SPAM, maybe CASL to some degree for folks up in the north, and then or maybe that have clients up in Canada, and GDPR. And then there's states coming out with their own set of laws guiding, how can you interact with the folks there, like California. It's vital that as a marketing team that you kind of keep up to date on all the latest changes and how does that impact like your contact list, and maybe how does that change some of the practices that you're doing as far as your email sends. So definitely things to keep in mind there. Email sender reputation. So one of the ways in which you can kind of go back and just validate, what do people think of me as a sender or as an organization, right? So Sender Score is a great tool. You can set up a free account, type in your sender IP address, and it'll actually give you a score between 0 and 100. And you really kind of want to shoot for like around 90. When you start getting below 90, it really kind of starts representing that you're probably sending out too many spammy emails or there's something going on there. So you may want to take a closer look. But again, this is just a helpful tool. Maybe something that's worth doing about every month. Or if you have months that you have to send out a ton of emails, like maybe way more than you normally would in just an average month. After that month is over, go back and take a look at your sender score again. And maybe that'll help kind of dictate like what you do moving forward. I just wanted to show examples. So this is a Staymate sender score. We're a 98. And it does kind of ebb and flow. So you'll kind of see some things move around just based on the volume of emails that you're sending again, and then the scores and how those fluctuate. But trying to maintain that above 90 score will definitely serve you guys well in the future, as it will help ensure that you reach the maximum number of inboxes that you're trying to reach. So email providers aren't going to start blocking your sender IP. Email and digital tactics. So again, I think email, it's certainly vital today as it was years ago, and it's only going to continue to grow. Trying to find ways that you can wrap email marketing into like your wider digital marketing kind of mix I think is extremely important. But there's also tools and things that you can use to kind of help maximize even your contact list. If you want to take out those contacts that you have in your database, maybe put them into a custom segment inside of Facebook and then market them there, or maybe through a DSP where you can send out display ads. There's a number of different things that you can do. But find ways that email can be a part of all these wider activities that you're doing, because ultimately email marketing and being able to nurture somebody is going to pay off much more than just targeting people with display ads. What to look for in 2021. So I really do think that accessibility, usability, and interactivity is going to continue to climb in importance, but also some of the features and functionalities, they're also going to kind of continue to take that step forward, and they're going to change. The dark mode, I think we'll start seeing more people actually maybe customizing their dark mode, more AMP emails. I've seen very few personally, but I think that'll increase. Animated GIFs, I think we'll continue to see animated images inside of emails, and we should. I think there's so much more worthwhile than just a static image in most cases. Deterring spam and unwanted emails. Again, some of it goes back to some of the state laws or national laws that are around email marketing and so forth. And spam laws. But, you know, as far as somebody like a Gmail or an Outlook, you know, creating tools and ways in which that they can allow their audiences, their users to easily opt out of emails is, I think it's going to continue. It's going to give people easier access to just a one-click opt-out. So you got to think about like what that means for like your email practices, making sure that you're sending the right content to the right people. Marketing teams investing in design and coding training. So I know that coding for AMP is a lot more advanced and slightly different than just, you know, if you're coding an HTML email, there's some additional things to learn there. And so all these new technologies and so forth, there's probably just trying to keep the skills up, trying to learn the next one. As email changes, it changes frequently. It's hard to stay on top of all those, but I do think folks will take the time to invest into some of that. The need for personalized content is certainly going to be there. And the other interesting thing, ESPs. So again, the chart that I had earlier on where it kind of listed out the top ESPs, some of those will get consolidated. So maybe the one you're on today is going to get bought out and will be owned by Oracle or Salesforce or somebody else, right? And so you're going to have to go back and relearn how do you use this new platform under them. So that does happen. Targeted multi-channel campaigns with email at the core. So I'm thinking I'm starting to see a little bit more of this. I know that we do some of that here at Staymates, but it's utilizing things like customer data platforms like BlueConic, things that you can learn about people who are coming to your website, that maybe you drove them there through a display ad and they signed up for e-newsletter, and you have a lot of really rich data on them that you can then pull back into your email database to start sending them the correct content or the things that they actually need. So for me, that's a really fascinating one that I'm excited about. But I think there's a lot of good things ahead in 2021 for email marketing. I guess in short, so if time and the resources are limited, I would start with a big focus on volume and relevance and design. If you're trying to create those big results, those are good places to start.
Well, great. Thank you, Corey. Great presentation. I learned a lot, and let's start our Q&A session now. A number of questions have already come in, but feel free to use that Q&A function to send in more. Let's start off with this one. When optimizing for mobile, what are your thoughts on using media queries to hide elements on mobile or desktop? I've seen mixed findings on what ESPs do and don't support on this. And it would be so nice to be able to utilize this to truly optimize for our mobile readers.
Yeah, that's actually a great question. I mean, media queries, their importance and responsive is obviously there. And unfortunately, the only thing that's lacking, I think, is consistency across email providers or email platforms. So like the Gmails and Yahoo Mail and Outlooks, whether it's the desktop version or the webmail version. There's no consistency about the rules that they have in place or what they accept. I think keep moving forward with media queries is probably a good choice, because I think that the technology and the companies are going to start probably getting closer together with some of the things that they are accepting as a whole. And so if it works well for you now, or maybe it's kind of buggy at times, I know that it's extra work in some cases to have to create emails for like different platforms or whatnot, but those do pay off. And I don't think it's something that you'd want to pull back on at this point.
Great. Here's another one. How long do you wait until you report on an individual email's performance? Is there a standard answer for that?
Yeah, well, I think, yeah. Again, like I think if you have people who are, I've worked with salespeople who want to know that the email was sent out, how successful was it? To be able to tell them the answer the next day is like really hard, because while you may have, a majority of the traffic in at that point, it's not really all the traffic, so you don't really know all the conclusions at that point. So I usually would give it at least 2 weeks before I say that, well, this is probably pretty close, knowing that there's still gonna be some stragglers out there that even after the 2 weeks. I used to get stats from people that would open up the email like a year later for whatever reason. And so, but after 2 weeks, like the vast majority is in, and you're safe to probably make a good call.
Here's one. Our emails are responsive to mobile devices, but they require you to right click to download images for the header. Does this lead to more deletes or unsubscribes?
I'm trying to visualize like what's taking place. So to be honest, if it's asking people to take the next step in having to download the header, and there's important elements in the header that they're not seeing, it certainly could be one of those things that would affect what people do with the email, whether they delete it or unsubscribe. So it's one of those things definitely to further investigate without knowing that. But if the content and the rest of the email is relevant and pertinent to that person, they may continue on. But just as far as like the overall aesthetics and the information we know about people and how finicky they can be about design, like that could certainly have an impact.
And how do you connect automated emails with search remarketing?
Yeah, so really with search remarketing, for me at least, some of the things like the cart abandonment, if they come and they've been searching for a product or maybe a service on your website, and you have those searches tied back to a database, and you know who that person is. Again, there's different technology points that you have to have connected to have this all make sense, right? If your website has to remember who's there, has to capture that data, then that data has to be passed back to the ESP. It's totally possible, and all the e-commerce platforms certainly have it figured out. But it's just being able to reach back out after somebody leaves the site with an email saying, "Oops, I think you may have forgotten to do this," and there's many other cases as well.
What are your thoughts on AMP HTML? Is this something we can start using, or is it something to watch as ESPs start to accept it more?
I think honestly, I would start testing it out more and seeing how the emails perform in different email platforms. We certainly know that if you're sending to a bunch of corporate folks and they're utilizing Outlook, especially on desktop or whatnot, like it's probably not going to maybe perform as well as you'd want it to, but maybe in Google and Gmail, it actually performed very well, the additional functionalities and features and not having to leave the inbox. So oftentimes when you're sending out emails, it's hard to say that it's going to look great across all of them, but there are platforms, ESPs, as well as like third-party connectors like Litmus that can at least show you like what it should look like when it gets to their inbox. And so just being able to kind of forecast maybe a little bit better the experience that somebody will have once they get your email.
Great, and we should probably start wrapping it up, but here's our last one. And I'm guessing the slides will be made available. And then do text emails perform better than those with images?
That's actually a good one. So there actually are some good use cases in which just sending a text email out without all the fancy imagery and headers and it's one of those things that the right audience, if you're trying to send them something more personal and it seems like maybe it's more of a one-to-one communication, I think that's a great use of a text-based email. If you're trying to promote something that's a little bit outside of that and they need to be a little bit more catchy and have some images in there, or like the animated GIF, the HTML rich stuff is certainly going to perform better in some cases. But also, I think it makes sense to do A/B tests. So if you have an email in mind that you want to try that out on, that you think would maybe work, the really rich HTML or the more basic text Send them both, like split the list 50-50 and see what happens. I think it would give you a lot of insights for future emails.
Well, excellent. And will the slides be available for the participants?
Absolutely. Yep. We're going to get those out to everybody.
Excellent. Thank you, Corey. Great presentation. And we're almost out of time today. So for all of the questions that were submitted that we just didn't get time to, we will be following up with each of you in the next day or two. And we're also offering a free 30-minute consultations on email marketing, and we'll share how you can sign up for that and also in a follow-up email. So thanks for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you again. And as a reminder, following the webinar, you will receive an email with a link to the recorded webinar. So thank you again, and have a great rest of the day.